Good afternoon and welcome to Farm Country Update, the biggest pork issues no one is talking about. My name is Jennifer Scheich and I'm the editor of Farm Journal's Pork, and I'm looking forward to a lively discussion today between our panelists who I believe represent areas of thought that might spark some of your questions as well. No one can deny that there's a lot to talk about in the pork industry today. Proposition 12, pork line speed ruling, high feed costs. But as we head into one of the biggest events of the pork industry, the World Pork Expo, I wanted to spend some time today talking to these industry-leading producers whom I admire and respect about some of their thoughts of topics that maybe aren't getting quite as much time and attention in the headlines today. So let's get to it. I'd like to begin by having each of our panelists introduce themselves a little bit and tell us a little bit more about their operation. We'll start off with Mike Poston. He's an independent pork producer with Poston Farms in Walcott, Iowa. He's currently serving as the past president of the Iowa Pork Producers Association. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Jen. Good afternoon. Just give you a real brief background of where we are and what we do. We're in Eastern Iowa, farrow to finish hog operation. My family's involved. We currently have 3 generations on the farm. I'm the 6th generation. Also grow corn and soybeans. And for all the amateur crop forecasters out there, in Eastern Iowa at least, the crop's off to a really good start. So who knows where the markets are going to end up yet, but I think so far so good in our neck of the woods at least. We have been raising hogs ever since my dad started pigs as a 4-H project. Before that, Grandpa had mostly cow-calf operation and would get some feeder cattle in from out west. But the hog operation has kind of grown over the years, and now it's all hogs, and we don't have any cattle on the farm. So not an uncommon transition that I think a lot of farms have gone through over the years. Yeah, I'm excited to participate in the conversation today, and look forward to hearing some good ideas.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Clint Schwab. He's the Vice President of Technology for the Mash House in Carlisle, Illinois. Clint, would you tell us a little bit about your role and your operation?
You bet. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm glad to participate. A little bit about my background. I actually grew up in Colorado on a small family farm there, and so I've been passionate about pigs and grew up around pigs nearly all my life. From there, I just as far as education goes, I did attend Colorado State University and then graduate work at Iowa State University. After graduate school, I was at the National Swine Registry for about 6 years. And then from there to the MASH office. As Jennifer alluded to, I serve as the Vice President of Science and Technology and oversee our innovation function for the business, one of which is a spinoff business, genetics business that we've started called Acuity as well. So I've been with the company actually as of this month. It'll be 10 years. So yeah, a little bit about me. Glad to participate.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Jen Sorensen. She's the Communications Director with Iowa Select Farms in West Des Moines, Iowa. And more famously right now, she is known as the President of the National Pork Producers Council. Welcome, Jen.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Just like Clint and Mike, I also grew up on a farm, hail from Southeast Iowa, Lee County, where I was raised on a contract production farm. My dad still tours the barns at 80 years old for Tri-Oak Foods. So definitely have an ag and swine production upbringing, went to Iowa State University as well, jumped into the College of Journalism and Animal Science, and have been working in swine communications for my entire career. I've been at Iowa Select Farms for 10 years now, overseeing the communications, external, internal. I work a lot in an employee engagement, content marketing, run the Deb and Jeff Hansen Foundation. And yes, as Jennifer mentioned, right now I am serving as president of the National Pork Producers Council, and I'm proud to be able to do that on behalf of Iowa Select Farms. So thanks for inviting me.
Well, it was fun to listen to all of your introductions because I didn't grow up too far from Jen. I grew up in Washington County, Iowa, worked for a brief period of time with Clint at the National Swine Registry, and did some livestock judging with Mike back in the day. So there's lots of kind of fun ties, and it's been really neat to watch all of you in the industry. I look up to the type of people you are and the work that you've done. And so I know today will be a great conversation, but before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping details. We highly encourage you guys to ask questions. We're so glad that you're joining us today. If you have questions, you can submit them either in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, or you can use the chat area. We'll be watching for these questions throughout and hope to get as many as we can answered in today's session. Just to note, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing later, and we'll be sure to send a copy of it out to everybody who registered. You know, I guess to get things started, we're going to be talking about some topics that, you know, maybe some of you are hearing a little bit more about in the news, but they're definitely topics that we think could use a little more attention. And the first one is one of industry margin volatility. This is a conversation that Clint and I had a few weeks ago. And Clint, just to get us started, talk to us a little bit about what do you see as some of the concerns with the industry margin volatility right now?
You bet. You mentioned early on that there's lots to talk about within the industry today, and that's certainly all of that's embedded into the volatility in the margins, or I guess maybe a better way to say it is the lack of stability that we've grown accustomed to recently. Started probably, you know, back when the PED days is when we were exposed to what this really could look like, and it just feels like over the last several years that it's just been that the swings in the industry have gotten a bit more aggressive than what we've been used to. There's, like I said, there's lots of reasons for this. I mean, you can talk about several things. Obviously, you know, you start with things like 1 of every 3 pigs in the US is exported, roughly. You talk about labor shortages, what seems like increased health challenges across every one of the systems that we operate. What we've learned just recently in the last week is not only reinforced by COVID, but some of the cyber attacks that our supply chain has potentially some holes in it. And so there's lots of things that lead to it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, it's the concern that I have for the industry is just essentially where capital is going to go. And if you look at the industry from an outside perspective, and if you were looking to invest your capital in animal ag, and particularly the swine industry, you'd notice obviously that it's, for one, it's very capital intensive. 2, it's relatively equilibrium wise, fairly low margins. And 3rd, it has a whole bunch of volatility and risk to it. So it requires us to be long-term and very patient type of investors. And as you look back on it, you wonder where we're going to be able to fund a lot of the innovative things that need to happen in the industry, especially when you think about some of the platform-based innovation that helps us manage risk in the long term. And if you look at it and think about the opportunities that may or may not be there in the industry, that's something that we need to solve as an industry to try to add stability and link up that supply chain in a way that helps us manage risk.
Yeah, I would agree with Clint's thoughts there, and add to that you know, I think it would be nice if we could start to think more collaboratively at the different stages of our supply chain. You know, historically, you know, each step in that chain has looked to just maximize the value that it can extract at that point in the chain. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there for collaboration and to change that conversation around to, you know, talk about how can each of us add value along the way so that we all, you know, come out further ahead in the end. But those are tough conversations to have, especially when, you know, we have, you know, decades long entrenched kind of opinions about and relationships between you know, producers and packers and retailers, you know. And I think I think it would be a good thing if we could start to maybe think out of the box a little bit and think about, well, how can we kind of reset some of those relationships and think about how we, you know, can all add something along the way. And that gets to Clint's point on innovation. You know, when everybody is kind of in survival mode and just trying to make sure they can weather the next, big event that comes along, or market swing or something like that. They're less likely to invest in innovation in their operation. And so, the more stability we can bring to that, I think it would certainly accelerate the pace of people willing to try out new things in their operations.
When you look at the stress points in the industry, it's so easy at times to sound like a glass half empty kind of person, really. I'm actually not that way. I think a lot of the challenges that we have in the industry represent exactly what the opportunities are. If we can solve even a small portion of some of these and start to work on them collaboratively, as Mike mentioned, across the industry, we can make a whole bunch of progress throughout the entire supply chain, whether you look at it just from a cost efficiency standpoint or starting to explore some of the value add opportunities that inevitably exist out there. I think there's lots of opportunities embedded within some of the challenges that we have.
I think too, to segue into another topic, but you mentioned it, Clint, when you talk about stability and innovation and all of that stuff, in order to move forward on that, you have to have great labor. And, as production leaders and innovators charged with driving companies forward, if you're spending most of your time focused and stressed out about, how can we get these farms staffed, and how can we get our sows bred and our pigs farrowed, you're not allowing yourself the time to innovate and drive the business forward. And I wouldn't say this lands in a topic that nobody's talking about, because I think everyone's talking about labor all the time. And we got to get to a place where we have a stabilized workforce. And, from a policy perspective, that's, utilizing that non-seasonal H-2A program, the TN visa programs, thinking outside the box on how we can tap into different labor supplies, how we can look at our own systems and job offerings to be more appealing to today's and tomorrow's employees. I don't know if that's flexible schedules or I don't know what that is, but we have to challenge ourselves to be an industry of choice when it comes to employment and go beyond some of our traditional pathways. A lot of times we get into industry conversations and we say, there's so many enthusiastic kids and youth involved in the show pig industry, and how do we bridge them over into the commercial industry? And I'll tell you why that's not happening, because the first thing we ask as recruiters is we say, do you have exposure to another source of pigs? Yes, then you're out, right? So we put up these biosecurity walls ourselves, and it's not a labor force that we can tap into because of biosecurity and downtime that's rooted in our industry. And I don't have a solution for that, but there's a detour that we're throwing up right away to be able to bring those kids and youth into the commercial swine industry.
Jen, you're right that that's something that's talked about all the time, right? What's not probably talked about is the fact that probably we need to take another look at our approach, right? And instead of just talking about labor deficiencies, start talking about new ways that we can, let's call it, refresh the talent pipeline. You mentioned the show pig industry in connection to there. I had a long-term friend and mentor of mine that talked a lot about the show pig industry. And to get somebody involved in the industry, you have to first understand that they like pigs, right? And so the show pig industry does that. I grew up in that industry, and so I appreciate what it brings to the industry and where we can tap into that talent. But that's just one way, right? That we can take another look at trying to identify where that talent pipeline comes from. We as an organization, we wouldn't have the clean answer either, just like anybody else, but we talk about it a lot and trying to identify ways that, we can innovate in that area, whether it's just the talent pools that we can look into and start to create the interest, but even ways that on the farms that we can simplify things and make training efforts more effective, all the way from that to how do you engage and retain your employees over time at the same time. It's obviously it's more questions than answers, but it's a big item for the industry. I don't know if anybody would really argue with that one, probably.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think, you know, even amongst farm kids, I think the swine industry maybe is mischaracterized, you know, because I think sometimes we assume that, well, if, you know, farm kids understand what we're all about, but the reality is, you know, I know of a lot of farm kids who would, you know, they would rather go drive a sprayer for the co-op than, you know, work with pigs. And they make that decision on bad information because they think that raising pigs is, you know, really labor intensive and, you know, and all these other things. And well, yeah, it's still a lot of work, but the work's different. You know, takes as much brain power as it does muscle power these days. And so, you know, I think sometimes we're still dealing with an industry perception issue, and that we're maybe not, the swine industry is not the first employer of choice for a lot of talented kids out there, some of whom might have some type of ag background. So, you know, I think we need to think about, you know, how we tailor the public face of our industry. You know, we talk about a lot about that when we're talking about consumers and the face of our industry, consumers. But, you know, I think we need to do just as much work on changing the public perception amongst the labor pool. Because I know personally from some of our experiences with some of our own employees, you know, we've had several people come on board who had, you know, zero experience with pigs when they showed up, and they're just awesome. They're awesome with pigs. They do a great job, but they literally did not know what they were getting themselves into, and kind of had to take a leap of faith to get there. And so, how do we make that easier for people to, you know, say, you know, hey, that sounds interesting. I think I would like to try that.
You know, one of the things that comes to mind, Mike, when you're sharing that is, as I've been working on these up and coming leaders profiles for Farm Journal's Pork Magazine, I'm seeing student after student come in, and I can't tell you how many of them don't come from a farm background. And so I think there's a really critical role that our universities play in exposing young people to these opportunities. You know, I always think about a young woman from Chicago that I got to know at the University of Illinois, and she had never been around animals at all in her life, but she somehow got involved and brought into the judging programs. And by the time she left, I mean, she's a top meat scientist in the industry. And, you know, stereotypically, she was not somebody that I ever expected to see get that excited about agriculture. And so that was just a really good reminder to me. But then as I read these stories, I think that universities also play a critical role in how do we better connect with universities to help young people see themselves and find a place in the industry. So many think they want to be a veterinarian, which is great. But in a lot of these stories, they realize, boy, I just really have a passion for working with pigs and I just enjoyed it. And there's so many opportunities here and they're really excited to get into the industry. So,
Jennifer, I think that's a good point. There's the traditional ag background that we've always relied on just isn't as strong as it used to be. And I think in cases like what you're talking about there, and I wonder as an industry whether we do a good enough job of really connecting those people to the higher purpose of what we do, whether that is just really connecting them with, you know, growing rural communities or feeding the world or creating better consumer experiences. There's ways that I think we can pull in their heartstrings, if you will, a bit more to get them connected to what we do more so than what we do today. And if we keep that like front of mind as how we work on our talent pipelines, I think that's one way that we can refresh our approach.
Yep, and I know for you know, not, of course, there's lots of jobs in our industry that don't involve, you know, being in a barn taking care of a pig, and so I think sometimes we need to raise awareness amongst professionals in other areas too, because I know I've joked with some human nutritionists in the past about how it must be frustrating for them to put all this effort into designing a nutrition plan and then nobody wants to follow it, or they only follow it for a week or something like that. And I've kind of jokingly told them, like, hey, you should be a swine nutritionist, you'll get 100% compliance. So the things like that where people don't realize the types of positions that are available in our industry, whether you're talking about meat scientists, geneticists, industrial engineers. There's just so many different ways that people can be involved in the industry, but they don't, it's not even on their radar that would be an option.
I think too, it's about appealing to lifestyle choices and schedule choices. So I'm a mother of two, right? And how many mothers of 2 or 3 that have young kids and they're picking up and dropping off at the bus say, working at a sow farm's a good fit for me? Probably not many, right? Knowing that you're going to leave your phone and you can't bring in your phone, you're going to be there 8 or 9 hours or more. And you think it's probably labor intensive. And so you think about that. How do we change our operations and our employment offering to appeal to young women who are juggling a lot of things, or young men who are juggling parent responsibilities? And I think maybe we have to look at ourselves differently and say, how do we become better employers, more flexible employers, knowing that the part-time gig work is a whole industry that is bubbling up here. The Lyft drivers, the Instacart delivery folks, that's what we're competing against. Maybe not so much in the rural America, but it will be soon. And so we have to think about how we become more flexible and more, I guess, even considered by certain populations that rule us out right away.
I think that's a great point. And we just got a question in the chat that I wanted to just hit on really quick with you guys, but they asked, what is the average age of the workers in your operations?
I'm willing to bet we have the biggest spread. That would be, would range from my youngest daughter, who's 12, to my father, who's 70. So we've got a pretty good range in there, but the average is probably, I'd say close to 50, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I don't know that we would cover completely that range, but we'd be close. I'd have to look up what the actual average is, but I bet it's not different than too terrible much different than what Mike said. I know our average tenure is somewhere between 3.5 and 4 years, but I can't speak right off the top of my head on what the actual average age is.
I'd say we have a pretty significant pool of young employees, 25 to 33. We still offer, that part-time entry, your high school employee working part-time, getting a few hours here and there. Those couple of hours can be a huge help to a short-staffed sow farm, and it's still a good pipeline for a career to a student who doesn't want to pursue college. So that's still a viable pipeline for us, that younger, 16, 17, 18-year-old part-time into full-time employment. So we're not giving up on our traditional pipelines at all, but we have to look at, and we have to I'll put on my NPPC hat here. We have got to keep pushing on, a labor solution. Thank God for that TN visa program is so beneficial to pork producers, and we just need to keep going and get that H-2A program that's not seasonal, that we can fill entry-level jobs on our farms.
Well, I think that we could all talk about this topic all day, because I know it's dear to all of our hearts, and I appreciate your perspectives. I want to move the conversation on to another topic that I've been surprised, in the last couple years doing stories, working with people, and talking to people outside of our industry. One of the things that they've brought up is this topic of meat quality improvement and innovation. And so, Mike, I'm going to turn this one over to you. Any thoughts on that area of discussion, and why isn't that talked about a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I think that's kind of one of those 500-pound elephants in the room that everybody kind of knows it's there looming over us, but are very hesitant to talk about it because of all the uncertainty surrounding it. I think we can all agree that meat quality is important for our industry, and we want the consumer to have a good eating experience every time they have pork. And we know from the past that, okay, the consumer wanted a leaner product. Well, we provided a leaner product. So, the industry certainly has shown it can rally around and produce a product that the consumer says that they want. But when we try to drill down into meat quality, I think there's a few things that start to muddy the waters. First, of course, is can everyone agree on what is an appropriate measure of meat quality? And I think we've got a lot of good information in this area, and there's still a lot of good work continuing to go on at universities and within companies that are looking at this. And what is the best measure? Is it pH? Is it color? Is it tenderness? And how can we measure that at line speed and track that? I think there's more and more tools becoming available that are making that a reality. So if we can get through that technical hurdle, then we get into where things get a little dicier, I think, and that becomes, okay, so who's going to capture the value of that then? Is the producer going to be paid a premium based on what the animals that they're providing? Is the packer going to just sort out what they have coming through their line and then just charge a premium for what they measure to be a premium product? And where are the trade-offs? If there are certain production practices or genetics that are going to maybe cause production to lag a little bit or not be quite as efficient, but produce a superior product, who's going to bear the cost of that? Is that going to be passed all the way down the chain to the consumer, who's going to pay a premium for a premium product? Or is that going to be just a mandate that the producer has to meet a minimum standard, or they won't be able to sell their animals? Those are the kind of things that are giving a lot of people heartburn out there. And I think, unfortunately, it's holding our industry back because, we aren't having those types of conversations that have the potential to move our entire industry, forward and hopefully, make us all be more successful at the end.
Mike, I completely agree. I think you've covered essentially the crux of it. And I hate to keep bringing it back to this all the time, but you think about the value stream as a complete system, whether it's the misaligned or lack thereof of incentives across the value stream, or those biological antagonisms that exist. It makes it tough to get the linkages in that value stream tightened up to where you can make sure that everybody throughout that value chain is aligned. And that's part of the challenge that we deal with as an industry all the time. And it feels like the innovation that's happened in this sector or this part is segmented, if you will. There's lots of innovation that's happened in the plant, in further processing, retail, and you go to restaurants and it's amazing to me anyway how creative sometimes they are with some of the pork dishes that are out there. It's stuff that I never even thought of or for sure didn't grow up with. And so that segment probably receives more credit than what the very front end of that value stream does. We haven't done very much in actually improving the raw material or that goes into the plants or the actual pork protein itself. And I'm sometimes confused, just like you are, Mike, about what are the real priorities? How do you line up which are the best things to focus on. Is it tenderness? Is it marbling or color? But throughout that entire value stream, we need to do a better job of breaking down some of the weak linkages that are there to really do a better job of connecting ourselves ultimately to the consumer itself. I think there's lots of things that we can talk about along the way, but we need to do a better job inevitably beyond just leveraging, some genetic resources or more Duroc sired pork within the supply chain. I think that's one thing that's happened, but beyond that, I think there's opportunities. We just have to balance it against the biological antagonisms that exist. Because one of my graduate professors used to talk about the difference between taste fat and waste fat, right? And so we want to control the waste fat, but we want to increase the taste fat. And so those two things to break those correlations is hard. And it takes focus to be able to do that. There's technologies you can, but you inevitably increase your cost structure to do it.
Yep, and I think a lot of that gets back to, kind of our initial conversation about it. So much of this comes down to just communication between all the different steps of the supply chain, and how do we foster more collaboration there and get folks talking about how we can all help each other out. I wish I had a magic wand that I could wave and come up with an answer there. But it's just going to take a lot of hard work, but a lot of open minds and willing to have some conversations about, well, what if we did this? What if we tried this? But that can be scary. I get it. But that kind of thing is going to be what it takes to move the industry forward, I think.
Though they're subtle, I do think that there are some signals that are happening, and particularly in some of the other industries that are opening the doors to some of the direct to consumer opportunities perhaps that are out there. Beef cattle is a good example. I think they have a supply chain that's set up that helps them do that, but there are some of those opportunities that maybe can be capitalized on or be part of this process going forward too.
All good thoughts. I was visiting with somebody yesterday in Mexico about their desire to basically get healthier snacks in convenience stores in Mexico. And so he was talking about their carne snacks and how they're trying to just rethink, that sector of the market. And I thought he brought up some good points. Are we innovative enough? So you did allude to innovation in our pork products, but I think this past year has been eye-opening for me, thinking about what consumers were gravitating towards, what we were doing more sales of than ever before. I guess as a mom who is trying to find fast things on the go for kids that are still healthy and are always having meat, and we love pork at our house. Any thoughts or any topics on innovation? Because I guess I see that as an area that we can always grow in, and maybe something that I hope we can see more opportunities down the road, because it seems like there's more options when it comes to beef sometimes.
Yeah, I know. From what I'm hearing, I'm not involved in any of these efforts, but from what I've heard, there's been a lot of activity on the ground pork side of things, and there seems to be a lot of innovation in that area that may fit that niche that you're talking about, the kind of quick and easy sort of thing. And I think in the past we've kind of ceded the ground meat domain to the beef guys and kind of just been happy to keep our little sausage kingdom, But I'm certainly excited to see something like that, where we can be innovative with products that are at a real affordable price point for a mass market, that could really get some traction there. It's great to see innovation in fine dining, and I think we've made some inroads there too. But yeah, that we could certainly use some more of those kind of mass market, affordable, quick and easy types of products, and hopefully that'll continue.
So I'm far from an expert on innovation within the further processing realm of the supply chain, but one thought that comes to mind as you ask that question, Jennifer, is if we could strengthen somehow the feedback loop that goes back to producers, I think it will open the door to other areas of innovation. And I think those areas of innovation can come from a lot of different directions, but the feedback loop, I think, will help. If it becomes more transparent and more frequent, pork producers, I know I can only speak for myself and the organization I work with, we're always striving to do better and to try to produce the best product we possibly can. And I know that, Jen and Mike would agree with that, but the feedback loop and the transparency that exists in that supply chain is going to enable us to continuously improve, or at least make the baby steps forward that hopefully gets to some of the opportunities that you were just referencing, Jennifer.
Okay, well, we'll move on to another topic, but that was a good discussion there. So, one of the things, I guess I feel like I basically started in this role, and then African swine fever was just all over the headlines. I started here in the fall of 2018, and man, these viruses are evolving fast. And so Clint, talk to me a little bit about, how you think the fact of these fast evolving viruses, how is that affecting us as an industry? And why is that something that we need to maybe focus in a little bit more?
At bare minimum, biosecurity is something that is, it increases in importance every single day we operate. I think recently we found with the 144 cut pattern, we've got a new definition of what a nasty virus looks like. And it just feels to me like, and the viruses are moving faster than we are. We've made some significant, as an industry, some significant changes in infrastructure to help segregate and support things, whether that's filtration or regional programs, or even the way that we manage disease in certain cases. But it just feels like we're chasing instead of leading the pack there on that. And I think the biggest push or challenge that I would make to the industry in this realm is just more collaboration. I think there's opportunities for partnerships. I think there's opportunities for collaboration across the industry, whether that's regional control programs, whether that's how we control epidemic disease or some of the viruses that are out there. I think there's lots of opportunities that we probably aren't capitalizing on as an industry today. I think there's lots of things started. I think there's, whether it's programs that are led through National Pork Board and so forth, there's coordinated efforts that are starting, but I think they need more momentum from my standpoint. Whether it's surveillance programs and getting us away from just the reactionary, let's call it the ambulance type approaches to managing diseases within the industry. If there's technology that we can apply to systems to let us know when we may have something subclinical starting to appear, and we can head it off at the pass, if you will, before it becomes a challenge, it gives us the opportunity, at least the opportunity to get ahead of it. So I guess what I'm really saying is that there needs to be a focus there. We've had mixed results, I would say, across some of the changes that we've made as an industry. We need to learn from those, try to find new innovations and technologies perhaps to try to get ahead of it. On that note, at the same time, we have industry challenges around just general survival of our supply chains as a whole too. And that's, as we talked about at the very beginning, I think embedded in that, that's a huge opportunity, but we need to look at each one of us, look at our systems and get more attention and focus placed on system survivability to add efficiency, increased animal care. It's of course the biosecurity and disease management elements of it at the same time, but through our entire supply chain, there's lots of opportunities in that realm at the same time. I have less answers here, more probably challenges than anything else, and just like a lot of the other topics that we talked about, but in my opinion, that's one of those smoldering issues within the industry.
Yeah, I'd agree with Clint that I think we're getting some of the technologies that will now allow us to be more proactive in our approach to managing, herd health. Because I think, everybody got kind of a demonstration of that with what's happened with, COVID and the mRNA vaccine platform, and here we are, 16 months out from a, a worldwide pandemic, and, we've got all kinds of people vaccinated for it, so, I think the swine industry, I think, has been ahead of the game in a lot of ways as far as learning how to manage herd health, whether you're talking about a herd of pigs or a herd of humans. And, it's not out of the realm of possibilities with the technology that's now available that you couldn't, diagnose and get the sequence of a virus on a farm on a Monday and, have a vaccine that you can vaccinate your pigs with the next week. It's, we're not there yet, but it's really not that much of a leap for us to get to something like that. And so I think the more that we can, keep pushing the envelope there as far as disease surveillance and being able to maybe finally get ahead of things instead of having to just kind of put out fires all the time, I think, that could go a long ways to improving overall mortality in the industry. But, and it's a big but, technology will only ever be as good as the people that are using it, and that, not to drag it back to our other conversation, but whether you're talking about developing vaccines, whether you're talking about biosecurity in a barn, it all comes down to people, and we need everybody to buy in to the idea that it's important to keep our pigs healthy, and we're going to do what it takes to do that, because I've always heard it said that about biosecurity in particular, like if it's too easy, then it's probably not effective, so biosecurity probably does need to be a little inconvenient, so it's just a matter of being willing to go the extra mile to make sure, those pigs stay as healthy as possible.
I think that's a really excellent point, Mike. It comes down to, diligence and execution every day on the biosecurity practices and protocols. And whether it's a couple producers at a farm or you're a system with 2,000 caretakers, I mean, that is really, really hard and a tough challenge to keep that prioritized and top of mind. I don't think anyone says, can't wait for biosecurity training, and boy, can't wait to be randomly audited by this team that's going to look at all my biosecurity documentation. I think, it takes, just like anything, just like a new innovative product or offering or service, you have to look at creative ways to bring that to the forefront. And instead of having it be punitive and compliance type of feeling, you have to make it a social norm, and you have to make it fun, right? And that's really hard to do in our industry. I mean, we've been talking about biosecurity and downtime and showering in and out and all this stuff for decades, and we have to challenge ourselves to maybe take away the big red stop signs and figure out a new way to make this hit home with employees, and talk about the whys behind the clean and dirty line, and the why we're showering in. And I see our vets at Iowa Select, they do a phenomenal job of trying to make that stuff fun and engaging and rewarding and positive, and high fives all around for feasting that bench. And we've got quirky things that we do, but it takes all of that every day, and all of those reminders to keep your entire workforce focused on doing everything right every time. And it's hard. It's really hard.
I'd like to move into traceability really quick, but we've got some great questions in the chat section that I want to come to as well. But let's talk about traceability. I mean, our beef friends are really talking a lot about this topic right now, and we don't hear about it so much in the pork industry. Mike, why do you think that's so?
Haha. I knew I'd forget to mute at least one time. No, I think, yeah, traceability is just one of those things that you start to talk about it, and it just kind of really raises the hackles on a lot of producers, because some view that as an intrusion on their privacy and things like that. But I think as an industry, I think we need to really think about how we want to embrace this, because it's not going to go away. And I think from my perspective at least, it really has the potential to help us more than anything, because right now it's kind of becoming more and more important as we think about foreign animal disease preparedness. And just from the idea of okay, obviously, hopefully we don't get African swine fever or any other foreign animal disease here. But if we did, our ability to quickly isolate it, contain it, and how fast we can do that, is going to be the difference between months of cleanup and years of cleanup. And so, there have been some efforts by National Pork Board and others to develop platforms where producers could, submit their information when pigs are moved from one location to the other. In the event of an outbreak, those records could then, be quickly made available to state veterinarians, so they could, try to figure out, okay, are these pigs tested positive? Where were they last week? And, sort all that out. So, I think we're going to get to the point where the benefits just are too many to hold back from moving forward in that area. So I really hope we can encourage producers to think about that and get on board with that, because I think it really is going to help our industry out a lot in the future. And there could be some value added things that go along with that too. Consumers are increasingly interested in where their food comes from, and when you're talking about things in the sustainability space too, traceability, will most likely be a part of those and many other things. How do you verify, the activities on your farm, and how do you tie that into the pork chop that ends up on somebody's plate? Whether you're talking about blockchain or other technologies, the ability to track that is here now. It's just a matter of, how we implement it. So, I think that's something the industry is going to have to, have some more conversations about.
I can't really add too terrible much, Mike. I think you covered it. I think that's right on, as far as particularly around some of the emerging diseases, right, and protecting the industry, right, and what the opportunities there are. But one point I just wanted to highlight that you brought up with a traceability program all the way through the supply chain. Just think about what kind of an added platform that gives us as an industry to communicate with consumers, right? And the myriad of opportunities that may come from that capability, just because we have a traceability platform in place. Now, I know that there's lots of challenges embedded in that kind of a process, but there's a lot of opportunities, I think, with traceability.
I want to circle to a couple of questions that we had from our audience. And one of those, I think, does kind of tie into what we're just talking about here. But, going back to our discussion on the feedback loop on consumer preferences, one of the questions here is, as an independent producer, where do you get your information on consumer preference? And as a larger organization like the Mash-Offs or Iowa Select Farms, where do you get your information on consumer preference?
Well, I can say for myself as an independent producer, I'm relying on, National Pork Board for most of that information. They have the experts on staff who are thinking about that and working on that every day. And so that's where I feel like, I'm getting a lot of value out of my checkoff investment, because I certainly don't have the ability or the time to, go out and talk to consumers and things like that. Now, if I was more of a niche producer, obviously that is a critical component of their whole business model. But for those of us who are raising pork commercially, it's just, not something that's in our wheelhouse at all. So that's where we're relying on Pork Board to keep us informed and to help be that conduit between us as producers and the consumers.
So obviously, I would answer very, very similar to that. National Pork Board has a wealth of expertise that I think a lot of us in the industry rely on. The short answer for us as the mash offs is it's largely incomplete information and it's segmented. We get, feedback from our packer customers is one place where we get feedback around the product quality that we deliver to them. Then there's of course the National Pork Board elements, but we also as an organization have our own branded food label too, that gets us one more step closer to the customer. And we get a little bit of feedback there from that sales team on preferences and so forth. But to say that it's a concentrated full effort, we're a long ways from there. And I think a lot of organizations that are not fully integrated all the way through, which would be like we are, it's tough to pull all that picture together. It gets confusing at times.
So I have a question I'd like to pose to each of you. And it's from one of our audience members, but they asked, all livestock sectors face significant risks and challenges currently and moving forward. From a priority viewpoint, what do you view as the greatest risks that are out there in the pork industry today?
I guess I'll go ahead and chime in. I would say one of the greatest risk is the, half a, billion-dollar anti-agriculture movement coming against farmers and attacking farmers. I think, we've been talking about this for decades now, and I hate to say we don't have a coordinated, well-funded plan in place to protect ourselves as farmers and defend ourselves. And I think the threats are getting greater and greater, especially with, their food and health scares, tying into COVID, more legislation, regulation, more ballot initiatives than ever before, their use of social media, everything that movement is doing and the funding of that movement and our lack of coordination and funding to debunk ourselves and set up legal strategy and prepare and execute a game plan terrifies me. And I feel really bad saying that because there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, but we need to get better at this because it goes back to that consumer preference study that the Pork Board rolled out last year. And when we talk about taste and quality and nutrition and all of those, things are so important to consumers, but what you're starting to see is I don't want to eat pork because I think the animals are mistreated, or because I think pork producers are doing environmental harm, or because I don't like big ag and factory farming. And that's where we're going to erode our consumer trust. And so I think we got to get better at this.
Yeah, I'd agree completely with that point, Jen, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of this activism is being driven by folks who are, on the far fringes of where most folks are. And so at the end of the day, what happens? Well, it drains a lot of resources, drains resources from the people who are donating to these causes that they think are going to help. It drains a lot of resources out of our industry trying to adapt and adjust to new regulations and things like that. And at the end of the day, it really hasn't done much of anything to improve animal welfare or the environment. So unfortunately, we have all these resources that are basically, evaporating, and no good is coming out of it. So, we certainly can keep improving and doing better. But we also need to make sure that we're getting our message out about what's really happening on farms. So I guess the other thing I would mention beyond that would just, be foreign animal disease is still pretty high on my list. Just seeing the devastating impact that it's had in other countries, and how long these countries are struggling to come to grips with ASF in particular now, is really concerns me, and really makes me want to push hard for our industry to make sure we are as prepared as we can be, so that, if something ever would, again, number one priority, keep it out of here. But if it does get here, we need to be able to stop it as fast as we can to minimize the damage.
I don't know that I have too terrible much to add. The prioritization of this, Jennifer, back to your question, is the hardest part, right? Finding the challenges or the stress points in the industry is obviously easier. But I would say, it's a little bit of the obvious statement, but generally the defensive get disrupted, right? And so I've heard that said to me a few times, and I think as an industry, we need to be as proactive as we can, right? Because ignoring the issue or not addressing it head on or being proactive about it probably just increases the likelihood of some of these challenges coming our way.
That's a good one, Clint. Wrote that down. So really quick, this is just kind of for fun, but I'm so excited for World Pork Expo. I'm not going to lie. One of the reasons this job was so appealing to me was because I thought I was going to get to go to World Pork Expo, and this will be my first time since I became editor. And I can't wait, and my schedule is loaded. But tell me, guys, what do I need to make sure I do? What are some of your favorite parts of World Pork Expo? In just a few seconds here, tell us some of your favorites.
I think I'd say it's the people. Love the industry, love the people. Can't wait to see everyone.
The opportunity to network, right? I think all of us are probably looking forward to getting back to that opportunity, but I'm also one that, I don't think you can talk about World Pork Expo without talking about the food. So that's obviously one of the things I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm right with you on that. The food, of course, but yeah, the people. I always go to Pork Expo with a list of at least 15 to 20 people that I need to catch them while I'm there and have a conversation about this. As great as Zoom and all that is, there's nothing better than just being able to sit down with someone and just have a chat about things. We still haven't replaced that yet, and that's what I've missed about Pork Expo the most.
I think that's what makes our industry so great. I feel like the collaboration and the willingness of producers from all backgrounds, all levels, all different roles in the companies and the farms coming together is just what it really is inspiring and encouraging to me. So I hope you guys will stop by Farm Journal's Pork's booth. I hope that I'll get a chance to see some of you next week. I really appreciate you guys joining us today. And just as a reminder, the webinar recording will be available soon on farmjournal.com, and we'll also be sending out a link to all those who registered. Again, thank you so much to all of our panelists. You guys were awesome, and really enjoyed hearing your perspectives and thoughts on the industry. And thank you so much for your time.